boys at Killer Cross. Right about now. We're about to take it to the max.
This is the pretty badass Kelly Klein telling you to turn it to 11 and take it to the max.
Hey everybody, it's the interview queen Alicia Atute here, and you are currently listening to the Max Wrestling Podcast. It's time to take it to the max.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Madhouse.
It's the charismatic enigma, Jeff Hardy. Welcome to the Madhouse. Good.
What's up, everybody? This is AJ Kirsch, one half of the MLW commentary team, and you're listening to the Max Wrestling Podcast. It's time to take it to the max.
What's going on, guys? This is another edition of Max Wrestling in the Hot Seat / on the mic with Mike, and I am pleased to have on this edition of In the Hot Seat the one and only one half of the MLW broadcast team. He was Buzz in the My Player for WWE 2K20, Tough Enough, LFC Lingerie Fighting Championship ring announcer. The man is a jack of all trades. He's my buddy, Mr. AJ Kirsch. AJ, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me back. It's always a pleasure talking with you.
Same here, man. I got to say, we have an interesting topic for the people tonight. We are going to be talking about WrestleMania 25. Can you believe it is the 11-year anniversary of Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker?
That blows me away. And it's weird. I can't tell if it feels like just yesterday or if it feels like a lifetime ago, because obviously a lot has happened since then with both of their careers. But I happened to be at that WrestleMania in person. For my money, it was the greatest match that I've ever seen, and I cannot wait to crack this open and get into it.
Okay, so here's the thing. Before we even talk about the careers of Shawn and The Undertaker and the matchup, tell us about being in that arena. I mean, WrestleMania 25, highlighted by Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker, highlighted by Triple H and Randy Orton, the personal feud that was with Stephanie McMahon and Vince McMahon being involved, and John Cena, The Big Show, and Edge for the World Heavyweight title. Talk to us what it was like being live for WrestleMania 25.
Well, when I first started my wrestling career, I made a promise to myself that I was going to be at WrestleMania 25. And the idea at the time was that I was going to be performing at WrestleMania 25. And obviously it didn't turn out that way, but I don't think I could have picked a better WrestleMania to just make a promise to myself to actually be present for. You just ran down part of the card. It was amazing. It's a shame, really, that something had to follow Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker, because obviously the main event was Randy Orton versus Triple H. But, I mean, you know, it was like Rock Hogan at WrestleMania 18. Like, something had to follow. Poor Triple H. He had the main event 2 WrestleManias
I know, right?
where his match was not the actual, like, was not the unofficial main event. It wasn't the match that really sold the show. You know, I'll play my violin for Triple H a little bit later, because he's really got it rough nowadays. I mean, poor guy, just can't catch a break. But yeah, just being in that building for those matches, and also I was and am a huge Kid Rock fan, so that was fun just to see him, you know, lead all the divas down to the ring. And I think that was also the night that Santina became a thing, and that was hilarious. Matt Hardy versus Jeff Hardy in a ladder match, like that card was just stacked top to bottom, probably one of my top 5 WrestleManias of all time. And once again, every match on that card was just phenomenal. But when it comes to all-time WrestleMania classics, Shawn Taker 1 is the tippy top #1 spot for me with a bullet.
I think looking at this card, like you mentioned, like the Extreme Rules with Matt and Jeff Hardy, you had Ricky Steamboat, friggin' the handicap.
Oh, that's right, with Mickey Rourke at ringside.
Yes. Oh my God. That match was incredible. Steamboat looked absolutely amazing, which led to the match at Backlash. Another one, right? Ricky Steamboat.
Yep. And that was another moment that just stole the show. And a moment that, going down the card real quick, I forgot about, just because there were so many classic moments on that show.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, like you mentioned, Santina Marella. Yeah, you're right with Kid Rock. So hot, I want to get you alone. Yes, performing.
Oh, yeah. Love that song.
That is an amazing song. But yeah, no, when you look at like 2009 with Shawn Michaels, I mean, the year prior, I was thinking to myself going into that, I mean, how can you follow I'm Sorry, I Love You? Because the year prior, he retired Ric Flair.
Right, and that was a moment that will live on forever in WWE history. That "I'm sorry, I love you" was just timeless. I mean, and that put an end to Ric Flair's career, in-ring career, at least in WWE, and that's a big deal, and especially for Shawn Michaels, who grew up wanting to be Ric Flair, idolizing Ric Flair. Like, what a cool moment for Shawn, and what a bittersweet moment for Ric Flair. But yeah, it's like, and I love how they integrated that into the storyline as well. I think there was a point where he mentioned, like, I don't know what else there is to do except challenge the man who's never been beaten at WrestleMania. It was an amazing story that wrote itself. The story was already told, but when you have two storytellers like The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, you know it's just going to be a masterpiece. And it was just that.
Of course. I mean, you're coming from Shawn and Ric Flair telling him he's Old Yeller, and then that year at WrestleMania prior, you had The Undertaker and Edge in that classic match for the World Heavyweight Championship, which I believe he won with the, I think that was the one he won with the Hell's Gate, and then the Major Brothers getting involved in the choke slam. Yep. So you're looking at a time where, like, I'm looking forward to next year's WrestleMania to see what they have in store. And then we get to Undertaker and Shawn. Now, I remember around this time, Shawn Michaels was feuding with JBL, and JBL was helping Shawn Michaels out because he was down on his luck.
That's right. He did not make he made some ill-advised investments and lost all of his money. And to this day, I still remember the promo the day after their match, when he's like, he is no longer Shawn Michaels Employee of the Month.
Yes. But that was the thing.
That was a great line.
It was. It's the great thing about the JBL Tycoon character, because he's facing John Cena at the Royal Rumble, and I think that was the first introduction we had with "Sometimes it's hell trying to get to heaven."
That's right. That's right. Another really good line. Yeah, and just the build up to that match was, again, just masterful.
Yeah, then John Cena beats him, and then afterwards, JBL, I remember, wins the Intercontinental Championship from CM Punk. And here's the funny thing about it.
That's right.
That match was before Taker and Shawn on the card. Ray and JBL, that lasted like 20 seconds, and then JBL retired.
Right. And I have not been the biggest fan of JBL, but pretty cool to see him go out the way he did in somewhat quote unquote embarrassing fashion, where he didn't want to make a big deal out of it. He didn't want everybody to know it was his last match, but he, quote unquote, did the honors. And Mysterio and I think the Joker,
Yep.
The Joker gear was super cool. And, that match was like exactly what I think it needed to be. It wasn't really even a match. It was a moment, and it was a super cool moment at that.
And that's the thing. We know what people, how we look at like matches now, and like the great matches, the 5-star matches, quote unquote. There's some things like they're just devised to be a moment, whether it be 20 seconds, what have you. Like Mickey Rourke, for example, when he did the Jericho thing, the moment was Mickey Rourke knocking out Chris Jericho because of the wrestler at the time. Yeah. So it's all about the moments too.
I think wrestling is more moments than anything else. Like, if you look at Hogan and Andre from WrestleMania 3, the match was garbage.
Yes.
But the moment of Hogan slamming Andre and then dropping the leg, that's what you see. But if you go back and look at the match, it's like, oh God, like, can I just fast forward to that moment? It was the moment.
Of course. And I mean, you had like the bill going into Hogan and Andre where he rips the shape. Andre, say it ain't so.
That's right. What are you doing with him, brother?
What are you doing with him, brother? Yes. But that's the moment too. And then everybody talks about Steamboat and Savage being the match on that card, but everybody wanted to see Hogan beat Andre, slam, leg drop, 1, 2, 3. That was the moment. And speaking of moments, like The Undertaker, like you look at when he was starting the WWE, wins the title from Hogan after a year. We see him just transform and change with the dead man persona, the American Badass persona, then back to the dead man at WrestleMania 20. And Shawn Michaels, obviously, the Rockers with Marty Jannetty, the Barbershop, then just becoming the solo great star that he was with the Intercontinental Championship runs, the tag title runs, the world title runs, the Generation X. It's just amazing just to see where their careers, I mean, 1997, I think the first match they had was, I think it was Ground Zero. That was the one before Hell in a Cell, right?
Ground Zero was the pay-per-view before Hell in a Cell.
Yeah.
I don't know the event well enough to agree with you, but if you say so, then sure, that sounds about right.
Okay, here's the thing. The only reason I know that is because WWE did a couple DVDs on Shawn Michaels. One was from the Vault that came out in like 2003, 2004. Right. And then the second one was the Heartbreak and Triumph one that came out around like 07-ish, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah. I remember that one. The cover was him on a ladder, like reaching up, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
That's right. I do remember that one.
So I think it was a DVD extra on From the Vault, I'm going to say. And it
I
was
see.
Okay, so Shawn Michaels and Taker had the Ground Zero match, which was actually not bad, and it told the story. They had this big old pull-apart brawl afterwards, leading to Hell in a Cell, and that will go down, not just being the first Hell in a Cell, but one of the greatest Hell in a Cell matches of all time.
Agreed. And a match that really set the tone for, I think, what the cell itself is supposed to represent, and just this unprecedented brutality. And not necessarily big bumps, but like going off that point, one of my favorite Hell in the Cells ever was No Mercy 2002 with Taker and Brock, when there were no big bumps. There was no like massive destruction, tables getting busted open and people flying off the cell. It was just a brutal, almost a throwback to the old school cage match where Taker was just brutally bloodied and Brock basically just beat him into submission, which I think is a stronger representation of what the cell itself is capable of, rather than just like, ooh, let's see what kind of big bump Shane McMahon is going to take or whatever.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too, because I remember watching that as a 10-year-old kid. Undertaker in the cast, and just, Undertaker has to take off that cast before No Mercy. Paul Heyman yelling at Stephanie.
That's right. That's right. And Brock beat the shit out of that cast and actually took it off for him, which exposed the hand, and it just told a great story.
And that's the thing. And I remember as a kid losing my mind because there was a point in the match where Undertaker kind of came off the ropes and did an elbow. And I'm like, oh, shit. And I'm just like the blood, the Crimson Mask, and Brock going up against the cell. And then the finish, what he just like lifts him up, scoops him, F5, 1, 2, 3. That really solidifies Brock Lesnar going into his WWE title run. But that's actually one of the most underrated Hell in a Cell matches. People don't give that match a lot of credit.
I agree. And I think it's because there is no just big, massive bump or spectacular display of destruction. But yeah, for my money, that is one of the top Hell in a Cell matches ever.
And that's the thing. Like people talk about like Undertaker Hell in a Cell. Like obviously everybody remembers when he chokeslams Rikishi into the truck at Armageddon 2000.
Right. Made
And
him
then
famous.
yes, he did. Okay, on a sidebar here, just for a second. So I watched the promo from Raw on AJ Styles, going back to like the badass character. Now I got to ask you, what did you think about that promo? Because that was just great, and for what they're doing with AJ Styles going into Mania this week, that was absolutely amazing. It threw me back, man. The "Try Me, I'll Make You Famous," the whole, if we're being real, Allen. Like I enjoyed that. That it's a sense of realism to it.
I didn't see it.
Yeah.
I'm not keeping up with a lot of WWE programming nowadays.
No worries.
Did he come back as the American Badass, or is he the dead man and just brought back some old catchphrases from the American Badass?
Okay, so to put it into perspective, so AJ Styles has been going at the Undertaker, calling him Mark, and Michelle is the one who
Okay.
Okay, that's the deal. And then he comes back, so he's wearing like the old school coat like the Dead Man used to wear, and he gets kind of like under his bandana. There's like a little bandana. It's very Dead Man-esque, but he's saying the old, writing a check that your ass can't cash. Try me, I'll make you famous. So you can see like the realism, like this is. So it's
interesting. So they're kind of teasing the return of the
Of the
American Badass at WrestleMania, which is going to be taking place in front of nobody.
Yes, correct.
Interesting. Strange times, man. Strange times.
It is. Well, I gotta say, I think in a strange times, positively proactive is what a lot of people need to do. You're one to do that. I've been seeing your Twitch videos, by the way, with your work,
Thank you.
You're welcome. No, but I think that's the thing, man. I mean, through the crazy times with the coronavirus, I think people have to stay positively proactive. Like I mentioned, I saw what you're doing with your workouts, AJ. But yeah, man, it really gave me a flashback to the Undertaker of old with the American Badass, which a lot of people have been clamoring for years with that. And I think that's something a lot of people sleep on. It's like his promos, like some of the best Undertaker promos, whether it's just Rest in Peace or as the Dead Man. And same with Shawn, like they made you believe, they made you invest, not just from selling in the in-ring, but like the promos as well.
Yeah, and I think it's because they don't sound like they're cutting a promo. Like, an actor does not walk on set and think to themselves, okay, this is a monologue. I'm going to get in front of the camera and recite these lines. It's like the actor is going in front of a camera and thinking that they are going to be, that they're like in a moment in the life of the character they're portraying. And so many promos nowadays, and it's almost everybody, which really sucks, but so many promos nowadays just sound like the typical cookie cutter wrestling promo, the same wrestling cadence that we've heard time and time again. They don't sound like real people. And guys like Shawn and Taker and people who've been doing it for decades, I think they know how to sound natural out there. So it doesn't sound like Shawn Michaels is cutting a promo or Undertaker is cutting a promo. It sounds like a moment in the life of the Undertaker that all of us are just witnessing unfold in a ring. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, and here's the thing, like when I look at Shawn Michaels promos, like one of my favorite promos isn't even from like a Raw or SmackDown or anything. One of my favorites was, you remember the WrestleMania 11 press conference? He's sitting there and he goes, "I'm gonna give you a show like you've never ever seen before. Why? Because I can." And just that,
Oh, sure. Yeah,
just
he's just oozing confidence, like somebody in the shoes of that character would. It didn't sound like a promo. It sounded like Shawn Michaels being an arrogant prick, which he was at the time.
exactly. And I remember one as a like a teenager when Undertaker was fighting. I know this is gonna make people laugh, but when he fought Heidenreich in the casket match at Royal Rumble 2005, where he's like, Heidenreich, this will be your last breath, and you will rest to be. Just the way he had Heidenreich look at him like lifelike, like
Yep.
kind of like with the Ortons, like oh man, like I don't want to get in the casket with the Undertaker. And that was when they were doing Heidenreich was fearing caskets, but it's just like I'm invested, I'm hooked, I want to see this.
Exactly. And again, that's exactly what a promo is designed to do.
And I think with the build up going into WrestleMania, so I remember he beats JBL at the No Way Out, and then he's free, and then Vladimir Kozlov, which let me ask you this, because late 2008 they were starting really to push Vladimir Kozlov. He would come out with the no music. He would beat a lot of enhancement talents. I believe Matt Jackson was in one of those, as well as a young Matt Bentley, aka Michael Shane from TNA. I gotta ask you, man, what were your thoughts on Vladimir Kozlov? Because they were pushing him to the moon with the title match with Triple H. He pinned the Undertaker on SmackDown. Undertaker goes for old school, bam, power slam, 1, 2, 3. What was your thoughts about Vladimir Kozlov kind of being in the mix for this?
He did nothing for me. I mean, that's it. He did nothing for me. The character didn't grab me. It didn't get my attention. Nothing against the person, portraying the character, but I'm just like, do I have a reason to be emotionally invested in this character or what happens with them? And I never had a reason to be.
Okay, now I'm not, AJ, as you know, you are a little bit older than me, but I'm gonna say this as a young man, 2009. Now, dude, I'm in my senior year of high school, right? So I'm watching Raw, and then I see Shawn Michaels versus Vladimir Kozlov, and I'm thinking to myself, for the love of God, if they go with Vladimir Kozlov, I'm gonna be pissed, because I had the same thing about
Yep.
you. Nothing against him, but I'm just like, no, no. And then he beats him with the super kick, and I'm like, oh God, thank you, because we're gonna get Shawn Michaels Undertaker. And dude, it makes sense because 2 years prior they could also include the footage of when the Undertaker eliminated Shawn in the Rumble to win the Rumble, and they did the continuity.
Right. Right. And, those happy accidents, they might not be accidents after all. They like anytime they can go back and dig up those gems to be like, yeah, these two go back like a long, long way. And this score actually, has yet to be settled going back to a decade earlier, almost a decade earlier. So it's cool when they can make that line up and use that to set the stage for the match.
You see, I think that's almost kind of lost, because I love when they bring the continuity of it. Like, for instance, like, all right, and not to put a damper on it, but I'm just like, when I'm seeing Edge and Randy Orton, like, I'm looking forward to seeing it, but I'm just like, this would be, again, unfortunately, with circumstances that are going on in this world, AJ, I'm like, Edge needed that moment in front of the crowd, and they're delivering great promos, and they're encompassing, like, Randy Orton was suspended for 60 days, and they're bringing that to the light, but I'm just like, you know what I'm saying, because of what's going on with what's going on in the world now, but I'm like, I like that
Yeah.
they continuity to it, because Randy Orton was suspended for 60 days. Edge and Randy Orton were friends. Now they're including Beth Phoenix. So I like that they tie in all this stuff. Like with Kofi and Randy Orton when they were feuding, like they take it back to 2009. So I mean, you have to include a lot of continuity, and I love it.
Yeah, me too. And those little nuggets, again, just they all come together to form the foundation of what is hopefully a compelling story and reasons to be invested in the match. But it does suck that it's not happening in front of a crowd. I'm glad Edge had his return at the Royal Rumble, but God, it sucks that he's not going to be able to be in front of a crowd at WrestleMania.
I agree, but I gotta say this: as far as professional wrestling goes, we're talking about Shawn and the Undertaker. Just to go back with this, like, man, one of my favorite segments was Shawn's like coming down from the heavens. They play "Sexy Boy." He starts dancing. Undertaker comes up from the ring, and just like it's the little things like that, because it's the heaven and hell, aspect. Shawn being born
Oh
again,
yeah,
and
the
the
the dichotomy between the two entrances,
correct.
it's like we said, it's moments, it's theatrics, it's drama, and hopefully you're already invested in the story to get you to purchase the pay-per-view back then. I don't think the WWE Network was a thing back then. But then, when they have those entrances that, as pumped as you are for the match, those entrances just make you go like, oh man, here we go.
Man, see, I'm right there with you, because when he came back as Dead Man at WrestleMania 20, and then you hear the late great Paul Hibera go, "Oh yes," you're like, "Oh man, he's
Oh yeah,
back."
the whole place went up. I happened to be at that WrestleMania as well, and yeah, that was a lot of fun to hear that happen.
And that's the thing, dude. It's the moments like that. But The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. All right, now I'm going to put you on the spot here because I love both matches. And people sometimes will argue about this, but I like both of them because the 26 match was the end. It was the last chapter of Shawn Michaels retiring. And, he does the throat slash, the spike tombstone, 1, 2, 3. Great matchup. But in your opinion, Mr. AJ Kirsch, which one did you think was better? Undertaker Shawn for 25 or 26?
Anybody who says 26 is wrong.
Yes. I'm going to be honest with you.
Unequivocally, like anybody who says 26 is wrong. It was an amazing story and a perfect way to retire. Well, quote unquote retire. We don't need to talk about Saudi, different canon, but like a perfect story to retire Shawn Michaels. But there was something about their match at 25 that just made it that much better than 26.
You see, what's great about it too is like also you could believe that there's a possibility that Shawn may be ending the streak, like the near falls from the Sweet Chin Music, the imagery, AJ.
Oh yeah, you believed it could. You believed the streak could end. Absolutely.
But the imagery when he tombstones him, Shawn kicks out, the look in his eyes, like, oh man, what do I got to do to put him away?
Yep. I mean, then that's it. It's moments. It's storytelling. And kudos to the WWE crew for getting those moments, capturing those moments, and making sure that the fans see that. Because I think I even remember JR saying the Undertaker's eyes tell a better story than we could ever. And he's right. In that case, nothing tells the story any better than the performers in the ring.
Exactly. And I think the big thing that came out of this, and I mean, everybody talks about it. So there's a spot in the match where The Undertaker is going for the patented dive. And well, all right, well, we'll get into this. What did you think of the spot? Sim Snuka was the cameraman. What were your thoughts about? He legit could have landed on his head, and that could have been really, really bad. But it was ugly, that spot when he was going for the dive.
It was. Taker knew how to protect himself, and it's a good thing he did. I think it made the dive look that much better and made it look like, that's legit how the match could end. There was a pop when Taker made it back into the ring. But yeah, it sucks that he was a little bit further away than he should have been. Yeah, I guess just leave it at that. It just sucks. But yeah, if you're charged with the task of taking care of arguably the most respected legend in the history of professional wrestling, you better be there.
Agreed. And I think what also made the match too is we were talking about the near falls, but I love one of my favorite spots is just again the super kicks, the countering. The finish was great because he goes for the moonsault and then tombstone 1, 2, 3. It's over. Like there's just again so many false finishes and just I think Shawn Michaels like again the year before Ric Flair, then you had the John Cena match in 2007, the Vince McMahon match 2006, Kurt Angle 2005, and then Undertaker's coming off Randy Orton, the Mark Henry casket match, the Batista match, the Edge match, and now Shawn. Like I really did enjoy like the mid 2000s Taker and Shawn Michaels matches that we saw there. I mean, yes, for the moments and the story, but I think these guys at their time, it was great that they meshed up at 2009's WrestleMania. Again, one of the most classic matches. A great 30 minutes from top to bottom.
Yeah, yeah, and everything, entrances, the match, the aftermath. Again, it was a masterclass in storytelling. And it wasn't a perfect match. Like there were a couple botches in that match.
Mm-hmm.
So every time somebody calls it a perfect match, I'm just kind of like, was it really? I think when Taker hoisted Shawn up into the corner, Shawn was not supposed to actually land on the steel part of the turnbuckle. I think he was just supposed to land on top. And then also during this exchange of attempted finishes, Shawn throws a super kick and Taker bumps it. And JR tries to cover it up by saying, Shawn Michaels got a low kick. And then I forget what happens immediately after that. I think Taker goes for Hell's Gate or something. So it wasn't as far as like, there were a couple missed spots in that match, but it didn't take away from the story at all. They were covered up nicely, but it's easy to kind of gloss over that. But as far as like execution, some things could have gone a little bit better, but again, it didn't take away from the story or the mystique surrounding the match, and that's a testament to Shawn and Taker.
Oh, agreed. I mean, you're right. You're right on with that spot. Like he goes for the Hell's Gate right after him. By the way, just on a side note, dude, the Hell's Gate. I loved how Undertaker always incorporated the MMA style into as well, whether it be the triangle choke or when he had taking care of business, the old dragon sleeper that he used to do. I used to love the fact that everybody looks at the Undertaker big guy, but he was so agile with the clotheslines, with the boots, the old schools.
He was, yeah, he could definitely move for his size,
and just like incorporate
deceptively athletic.
Yes, and I love how he incorporated the Hell's Gate. And again, it's one of those things where, like, you're right, there were some moments that were kind of it was little, you know what I'm saying? But I think a lot of people can say, and I think you can agree, when people are getting into the professional wrestling business, this is one of those matches where people are getting into wrestling, like, yo, watch this. If you want to see, like, a match, how the story is told and what have you, I think this is one of the go-tos.
Yeah, I agree. And it's like I said, the botches in that match in no way take away from their ability to tell a story. And that's why that match has stood the test of time.
Agreed. Now, I'm going to say this, just touching upon 26 for a second. Now, you know what it is that really got me about that? And I'm going to say this, 25 was the better match, and I agree with your sentiments on that. But I think for me, listening to Placebo's running up that hill, and, he wants to get that rematch against Taker. Like, it started from the Slammies, it started with the Rumble, then he cost, the Undertaker the world title in Elimination Chamber. The story going into it was great, and it led up to Leave the Memories Alone with Shawn Michaels with the spike tombstone and the tribute.
Oh, that's right.
Leave the memories alone. Fuel, baby. But, I mean,
it's a good song. It's a good song.
It is, man. Just on a pop culture note, man, as an 8-year-old kid, I'm not going to lie, I was rocking out to some Fuel, Hemorrhage in my hands again. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that went into Taker and Shawn, but I watched that match. I remember the moonsault. I remember just them going back and forth, kind of like this one, but I'm just like, I was kind of like, yeah, there was like something that I'm just like, it's really hard to try to follow up what you did the previous year. I mean, John Cena and The Rock did twice in a lifetime, but I'm just like, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like the sequel wasn't as good as the original.
Yeah, I agree. But, I don't blame them for trying to replicate that magic with the sequel. And with the story of Shawn putting his career on the line, it gave everybody a reason to tune into it again. And they also knew that was the main event of the show. That was not for a title. That was not for any other reason than it's Taker's streak and it's Shawn's career. And no title in any avenue of imagination is going to top either of those stakes.
It's kind of like WrestleMania 19, and what I mean by that is like when you have Crack Addict by Limp Bizkit. I'm talking about Rock and Steve Austin, the infamous JR line. It's not about titles. That's not about it's not about titles. It's just about respect. These guys hate each other, and then you see them going back and forth. Like it's those kind of lines that make the moments. Like when Undertaker match, when he fought Jeff Hardy for the Undisputed Championship, climb the ladder, kid, make yourself famous. It's those moments, and JR has a lot of is a pinnacle in that.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's why JR is the best wrestling commentator to ever do it, is that he provides the soundtrack for those moments. And even though those moments are by themselves substantial and memorable, his calls just make them even that much more so without overshadowing those moments. And therein is definitely the art of commentary.
It is. And I'm going to say this. I'm going to put yourself over, you son of a gun, you on the MLW broadcast.
Thank you.
Well, no, you're welcome. I got to because I've touched upon this, and I got to give a shout out to my boy Travis the Walker Anderson. Let me tell you something, man. We love your work. Travis is a big fan. He's going to listen to this, but I think one of his favorite things is because we see what he does on AEW TV, and he's just got that natural heel persona. You just want to smack him. You and MJF, when you guys were on commentary together, and just the look on your face, like I'm invested, man, just because like he's insulted you, he's dogging you, but I could just tell that's what makes a great story with the announcer and the professional wrestlers. And I've always enjoyed that with the commentary aspect with the announcers.
Yeah, I appreciate that. He was always, I mean, he's a dick, but he's always a lot of fun to work with. Hard for me to keep a straight face when MJF was on commentary. Even though he is a gaping asshole, he makes for some quality moments. And again, that's what wrestling is about: memorable characters and quality moments. And he is definitely both of those things.
So what you're telling me here is I'm going to flip it back, man. I know this is my pop culture nerdiness coming out, AJ, and I'm taking you along this ride with me. Man, there was a show on VH1 called The Tool Academy. So you're saying MJF would have been a perfect fit for The Tool Academy?
Oh, he would have been the entire hardware store.
I love this, man. So, AJ Kirsch, I gotta say this: when we're touching upon Shawn and Taker, I mean their legacies. Again, I mean I'll be honest with you, Shawn Michaels being in the Hall of Fame, just as a part of D-Generation X, we got to see him get in there as well. I mean Solo the whole nine, but with Shawn Michaels, I gotta say, just another legacy, man. I gotta say, what he's doing now, helping the talent in NXT UK, I think that's a great teacher. I mean, he's helped train the likes with Daniel Bryan and Brian Kendrick. I mean, along with William Regal. But I gotta say, I think for the wrestlers going in there with NXT and NXT UK, you have a great mind with Shawn Michaels, who was trained by Jose Lothario. So you get to see him giving his mind in the back ends too, as well, behind the scenes.
Yeah, I don't know that you could have a better teacher than Shawn Michaels. I mean, he came up in the 80s, you know, when it was a very different way of doing things, and he was coming into his own in the 90s when stuff was changing and really hitting his stride right as the Attitude Era was about to pop. And it sucks that he got taken out when he did, but the fact that he was able to come back and reinvent himself and really have a run a second time that was as amazing, if not even more so than the first run. Again, I don't know that there's anybody better to learn from than Shawn Michaels.
Dude, I love that you mentioned that because, man, I got to segue to this because I was there SummerSlam 2002. Shawn Michaels, Triple H unsanctioned. What a hell of a comeback with that match and just the story that him and Triple H had with going into that. And then you look at The Undertaker, like from the beginning with 1990, then to the Attitude Era, then to the Badass. I mean, you get to do what he is because he is that guy that rides on the motorcycle. He is Big Evil. He is the Dead Man. He is the Phenom. And I think over the years, I mean, again, I can't wait till he goes into the Hall of Fame. I think that's going to be an amazing thing for WWE when we get to see The Undertaker go into the Hall of Fame. But over the years, I mean, it's always that presence, and everybody loves seeing The Undertaker come back. So, I mean, he's another one that I can't wait. He's another one I can't wait till he goes in the Hall of Fame, AJ.
I agree. And if WWE, I mean, this wouldn't make sense for television for the presentation, but if WWE could put somebody in the Hall of Fame in a class all their own, it should be The Undertaker.
I gotta agree with you on that, and I gotta say this: whether he's teaming with Kane and the Brothers of Destruction, whether he was teaming with the Big Show against the likes of Kane and X-Pac, or what have you, man, I think the Undertaker is one of those guys, Big Evil, riding a motorcycle, coming out, making the lights turn on and off, and the whole nine. It's such great storytelling. I mean, has he had some poo-poo matches? Yes, I'll be honest with you. As a 14-year-old kid, I was not a fan, like a lot of people, of the Great Khali match from Judgment Day 2006,
Ugh.
but. Oh, see, you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Uh, I mean, he was the guy. All right, I'm just gonna say this right now. Sidebar: Great Khali, guys like Kamala, guys like Heidenreich, like that I mentioned. Who else can I put in there? Like Luther Reigns, No Way Out.
Sure. I mean, they're
Sure.
not hired because they can work. They're hired because they're monsters.
You said that. I didn't, but correct. Um, it's just he got to work with some guys that I'll be honest with you, there was a lot of poo-poo matches during 2005, 2006 with The Undertaker. And then once you get to like Batista, and then you get to guys like, for instance, Randy Orton was in there. That was 2005. But once we get to Batista and the Edge feud and the Shawn Michaels feud, I mean, there's some bad moments, but we get to see him rise up once we get to the mid-2000s.
Yeah. And I think every wrestler has had, you know, regardless of how good they are, they have those poo-poo matches from time to time. It's just part of, you know, part of trying to create new feuds and new stories. You're going to work with people who you might have to carry a little bit harder than others. And Taker definitely had to do that. But, you know, Taker is an amazing performer, and he's pulled some great matches out of some terrible workers. But, you know, there's sometimes the magic just isn't there. I remember hearing a story of how Steve Austin and Arn Anderson had a terrible match in Japan. And when you hear Steve Austin and Arn Anderson had a bad match, you're like, what? How could those two possibly, like, you'd have to go out of your way to have a bad match with those two. But sometimes the chemistry just isn't there.
I think, all right, so I remember there was one, I'm trying to think with Shawn Michaels if he really had like a terrible match. And that's the thing, like a lot of people say, you know, they can wrestle a broom would be a good match. Like I can't necessarily for the life of me. I know people talk about the Montreal Screwjob with Shawn and Brett, but I'm like, that's something completely different. I'm not even judging by match.
Wasn't a bad match.
It wasn't. It really wasn't. That's the thing. But people look, oh, it's the screw job. It wasn't as great as WrestleMania 12. But I'm like, it was not bad. They had a hell of a brawl in the crowd. It's just the finish was the, pardon the pun, screwy.
Right. That's what everybody remembers is the finish, and for obvious reasons. But Shawn and Brett, I don't know that Shawn and Brett ever had a bad match.
No, and that's the thing too. When you were talking about Taker and the poo poo matches, like I remember going into WrestleMania 23, like I was looking forward to John Cena and Shawn Michaels, right? I mean, they were the tag champs going into that. You know, the whole let's make shift and put it as a tag team, and they win the.
Absolutely.
So I remember going into Taker and Batista. Now I remember 2007, Batista beat Mr. Kennedy at the Royal Rumble to retain the title, and I'm like, oh man. And it wasn't like a match that really thrilled me. I was like, okay. And then the Undertaker wins the Rumble, and I'm like, oh man. So we're gonna get Taker and Batista because I'm like, he does the 3 thing. Now I'd be interested if now let me ask you, because we got John Cena later on, like in 2018, right? That quick match. Now, would you have rather seen the Undertaker and John Cena at that time at WrestleMania 23 as opposed to Batista? Just a thought, just because that would be.
Yeah, maybe. The only reason I hesitate is because Shawn versus Cena was an amazing match. Like
Mhm.
they pulled out one hell of a main event. I do know it was originally supposed to be Triple H and Cena in a rematch from the last year's WrestleMania. And if they were shuffling things around, then like, yeah, I think Cena and Undertaker, and not some 5-minute bullshit match. You know what I mean? I think everybody would have liked to have seen. I wish it would have been Cena versus Taker at WrestleMania 30. I think because Super Cena, if anybody in the modern era could take down the Undertaker and his streak, it would have been Cena. And if Undertaker still had his streak intact, Taker versus Cena would have been just too close to call. You wouldn't be able to call it. And it's a shame we never got that match. I mean, it's a shame we never got that match in the way that I think most fans would have preferred.
And I think I agree with you on that because I mean I remember watching Vengeance 2003, the Badass against Basic Thugonomics. They hadn't really had a one-on-one pay-per-view match since Vengeance 2003. Obviously tag matches and stuff,
Right.
but yeah. And then I mean for
And
Shawn,
that's the thing. They never touched on like a bigger in recent history, and they didn't. And that was back, like you said, when Cena was doing the rap gimmick. So it's like they they conveniently never really touched since then. And since then, Cena became the biggest star in the business and arguably the most consistent leading man in WWE history. And it just would have been nice to see it. But
it,
there's a handful of those matches that it would have been nice to see, and it's a shame that they won't happen. But at this point, they just won't happen.
agreed. And I think the last thing I'll say about Shawn, like obviously we saw him get involved in the Triple H Sting match during the whole NWO and DX kind of deal that they did at WrestleMania 31, and obviously being the ref for Triple H and Undertaker at WrestleMania 28 in the Hell in a Cell. But I think Shawn and Undertaker, two of the biggest legends, two of the biggest stars. That matchup will go down in history. And I personally, it's very hard of a list to not put that at number 1. It's definitely in the top 10 of the greatest matches in WrestleMania history, one of the greatest matches ever. But I gotta say, man, it's great to be talking about this and reminisce again 11 years later. And I think for the newer generation, it's going to be a treat for them to go watch back on the network or just watch in general, man.
Yeah, and how lucky for this new crop of wrestling fans that has the WWE network and just so many hours of content. Like, and this sounds like an ad. Like, fucking, I'm not under contract to WWE. I don't give a shit. But like, it's great as a fan to go back. Like tonight, I was like, you know what? I haven't watched in a long time. Stone Cold Steve Austin and Bret Hart from WrestleMania 13. You literally cannot watch that match enough times, and it is nice to have a medium that provides that for you. So like, if you are listening to this and you're not familiar with Shawn Michaels and Undertaker from WrestleMania 25, carve out some time because everybody has a lot of time on their hands nowadays. Now that places and gatherings aren't a thing, so carve out some time and check out Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker at WrestleMania 25. You will be so glad that you did.
I'm going to say this as well. First and foremost, you said Stone Cold Bret Hart. Steve, do you give up? And then the blood.
Right, Ken Shamrock just yelling it at the top of his lungs.
Steve, do
Love
you?
it.
Oh, one of the greats. And now I got to say this about you. All right, AJ Kirsch, I tell you this every time we've done shows. Go back and listen to On the Mic with Mike and LFC, Lingerie Fighting Championships, Beauty, Strength, and Dominance. Dude, it's always great just to interact with you, talk about wrestling or LFC and what have you. We're going to do another one of this, folks, for In the Hot Seat. AJ, you and I were talking about doing some video games, and we could talk about your love of No Mercy that you always talk about. Because, dude, I've never seen someone so passionate about No Mercy, because it is a great game. I know you love you some No Mercy, AJ.
Greatest pro wrestling video game of all time. And I know that might be weird coming from the voice of Buzz in WWE 2K19 and 2K20, but like I said, I'm not under contract to WWE. I can say what I want. And for There has never been, and I dare say never will be, a game quite like WWF No Mercy. I still want 2K to adapt that gameplay style and just shine up the graphics and the creator, like everything that's the depth that they have right now in the 2K series. But for the love of God, just do the same control system. It would be amazing.
We'll touch upon this when we do it, because there's the argument between that and Here Comes the Pain, which we'll talk about in the next time.
No, that's fucking garbage. Anybody who says that is full of shit.
Save it for the next show.
I'll save it. I'll calm down.
All right. But I got to say this about you, and to put it bluntly, you are one of the most talented SOBs, talented son bitches that I know. And like I said, it's always a pleasure talking to you. You are an asset, not just to MLW and professional wrestling. You're an asset to Lingerie Fighting Championships. I got to say, I love you, man.
I really appreciate that, man. It's always a pleasure talking with you, and I've been very lucky to have a career that has had some surreal moments, and the ride continues, and the ride might take a different shape now that we've obviously all had to adjust our lives based on COVID-19 and just the impact it's had on everybody. But we might slow down, we might have to adjust, but I'll be dead in the cold ground before I stop.
Well, AJ, I don't want you to stop. You're never going to stop. I don't want to stop, to quote Ozzy Osbourne, take it back to 2007 there. But with you, Mr. AJ Kirsch, I'm going to step back here. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Plug the Twitch. Plug some Broseph Joe Brody, because you are an also entertaining hell of a person with Hood Slam, man. Talk about where everybody can find you. You're an awesome human being. Go ahead.
Appreciate that. Let's see. Twitter and Instagram are both at AJ Kirsch. Facebook.com/I am AJ Kirsch. YouTube.com/I am AJ Kirsch. And by the way, Kirsch is Kirsch. As we mentioned earlier, I'm doing live streaming, no equipment bodyweight workouts on my Twitch channel, which is coming in handy considering gyms are closed down. So if you want to get up, get moving, get a good sweat, and get a good workout, you can do that with me every weekday night at 5:15 Pacific time. The stream starts, and the workouts start at 5:30 in the evening. And then weekends, the stream starts at 1:45 Pacific time. The workout starts at 2. That's twitch.tv/AJ Kirsch, or just at AJ Kirsch on Twitch. And then, of course, I have separate social media for Broseph Joe Brody, which is intended for a 21 and over audience. Just so you know, there's a lot of cussing and a lot of rude and crude references. Facebook.com/Broseph Joe Brody, and Twitter and Instagram at BroJ Brody. I'm all over social media, maybe a little too much, but follow me on all the things and decide what you want to unfollow later. But just follow me on all the things.
That Nickelback singing son of a bitch.
That's right. Goddamn right. Look at this photograph.
Every time I hear it makes me laugh.
That's right. Everybody knows and loves that song. And if you say you don't, you're a liar.
Stop being a hater for Nickelback.
Goddamn right.
Hell yes. So AJ Kirsch, AJ Kirsch, do you have any final words to the people that have been supporting you day one, and anybody that's going to be tuning into some Max Wrestling in the hot seat on the mic with Mike? Do you have any final words to your fans, sir?
Just reach out to your favorite performers, see how they're doing. Times are tough right now for actors, for wrestlers, for athletes. I mean, not like top tier professional athletes, but like, anything that involves a crowd or people gathering, like check in on the performers that you appreciate and just make sure they're doing okay. Find out how to support them, buy a shirt, follow them on social media, join them for a Twitch workout. Like, there are ways to support your favorite performers, and they need it now more than ever. So, find whatever you appreciate as far as live performance, seek them out, let them know you appreciate their work, and let them know that you're there for them.
My final words is, AJ Kirsch, first and foremost, thank you once more. We're going to do another one of these, talk about video games, and AJ and I might get into a heated argument about No Mercy.
Oh, I'm sure we will. I am sure we will.
And I just want to say this, guys, stay positively proactive through these times, unfortunately, with the coronavirus. Just stay positively proactive, work out. Just do something that makes you happy, and just try to make the best of what we're going through in these unfortunate times and in times of uncertainty. So I just want everybody to stay safe. AJ, I want you to stay safe, and I want to say this. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you for having me. Like I said, it's always a pleasure talking with you, and I look forward to verbally eviscerating you about why you're wrong about the best wrestling video game of all time.
So for AJ Kirsch, my name is Mike Larkin. This will conclude another edition of Max Wrestling in the Hot Seat / On the Mic with Mike. We'll talk to you in the next episode. Everyone have a great night.